So in this video, we're going to talk about brain-derived neurotrophin factor. If you're familiar with my videos on the website, we're going to be giving you Google cues, we're going to be giving you books, we're going to be giving you research papers, and then I'm going to be giving you some advice based off of the information that I've learned from the books and the research papers, and scouring the internet trying to figure out what is neurogenesis? What is that? So I'll be hanging out down here in the bottom corner of the video for the remainder, so just look over here if you want to see me talk, but look right here first, because we're going to start with this. So this is at the very bottom of this page. I'm going to show you this specific research paper where I kind of plugged all of the information in this, and then I reverse engineered it for 2 years. So this is the hidden mechanics of depression, and BDNF is a part of depression. So you can see right here, it talks about the treatments administered in the initial phase of depressive disorder. And by the way, BDNF is like Miracle-Gro for your brain. Like, you optimize your life around your brain, you're going to improve in every way, shape, and form. Like, if you optimize for brain health, you can have six-pack abs if that's your goal. It's really not that hard. So, the treatment administered in the initial phase of depressive disorder with antidepressants has a relatively effectiveness rate of 23% in 6 to 8 weeks. And yeah, that's pretty bad. So 23% chance of success in 6 to 8 weeks. And 70% of people with major depressive disorder did not achieve a response at all. So 70% of people that are actually truly feeling depression don't get any benefits from antidepressant medication. So this kind of starts to point. And as always in these videos, I'm going to start to point you in the right direction where you can go do your own research to determine whether or not, like I used to be on SSRI medications. I am not anymore. That is my personal choice. I did not go to a doctor and talk to them and choose, okay, I don't need these anymore. I did my own research and found my own conclusions. And I would say, hey, I feel a lot better now than I did before. Felt like a zombie back then. So you can see right here, one of the main mechanics of an antidepressant drug occurs through the increase of brain-derived neurotrophin factor. So you're looking at a proposed mechanic of antidepressant drugs increasing your brain-derived neurotrophin factor. Now, for myself personally, I was eating a lot of sugar, and when you do simple Googles, so sugar spikes are an enemy to brain-derived neurotrophin factor. So this is where we're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates, which are spiking our blood sugar. We're not getting enough fiber to slow down that glucose release into our blood. And this is where you get into fasting as well, which there's going to be, if you're on the website watching this, there's going to be another video on fasting. But you'll see how lowering your sugar intake is actually raising your brain-derived neurotrophin factor levels. And it says, which is crucial in the fight against Alzheimer's and dementia. So this also goes into the gut microbiome video that we were talking about with the bigger the belly, the smaller the brain research. So if you truly are eating a bunch of carbohydrates, becoming insulin resistant, where your body can't process the sugars that you're consuming, that's where the dementia levels are coming from. So you can see everything starts to connect itself. Like having my gut in a healthy place is also going to help my brain get in a healthy place. So sugars from refined, I already said this, but it's just going to say it right here. I didn't even see that. But sugars from refined sugar lower your brain's production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is disastrous results for your brain cells. So once we go over into the next Google, you can, please read these, learn about these. You're more than welcome to believe if they're true or false. I personally believed all of this information to be true, and I follow it on a daily basis. So when everybody's like, how do you talk so fast? Well, just learn about brain-derived neurotrophic factor, neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and read books on 3.5 speed. It's going to be pretty easy. So neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells in your memory and learning center, which is the hippocampus right here. So you can see as BDNF infusion directly induces hippocampal neurogenesis. Then it says this antidepressant effect of BDNF may also mediate the enhancement of neurogenesis. So recent studies have addressed how antidepressants increase BDNF and neurogenesis. So like when you think about improving your life, right? Sprinkle some Miracle-Gro to enhance your brain cell function and enhance your plasticity levels. And then we'll talk in the fasting documents about intermetabolic switching, going from ketones to fats, why a lot of people end up fasting to raise their brain-derived neurotrophic factor levels. So you can see brain-derived neurotrophic factor and neurogenesis, and you can look at brain-derived neurotrophic factor and fasting. Does this increase this? Fasting is a form of stress that stimulates BDNF secretions. So when you start to look at improving your brain function, a cool, simple takeaway from the microbiome video as well is mind your gut and you keep your mind. And then wake up, don't eat, let your glycogen deplete. And you can just say like, what is this is I started with all of this. Like, what is glycogen? I was like, what is this? It's a form of glucose. So this is where we get back to the conversation about our glycogen stores, lowering our sugars. Our sugars would be high, would lower our brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So in this case, lowering our sugar, raising our brain-derived neurotrophin factor, raising our rates of neurogenesis, raising our rates of neuronal plasticity, and the ability to form and keep new connections in our brain. And then one of the books we're going to be speaking about, let me move my face out of the way. This one, The Brain That Changes Itself, is going to talk about plasticity in the brain. And you can see right here, which would be BDNF and neuronal plasticity. There's a lot of other things that go into plasticity. We're going to talk about that in the meditation videos as well. But BDNF is a protein that plays a major role in neuronal plasticity and neurogenesis. So now you can, by the end of this video, I hope you're able to connect most of these together. But you can see increasing BDNF can have a profound effect on cognitive function, so the ability to process your information, memory, mood, and overall mental health. Like, I can tell you whenever I was eating breakfast, for myself personally, it was 2 sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffins, 2 orange juices, 2 hash browns from McDonald's, and maybe a cookie. So that's where I started. And then I learned about fasting, and I said, holy crap, like, when you feel intermetabolic switching, going from functioning on carbohydrates to fats, it's literally 2.1 times down to the mitochondrial energy itself. And where we would deduce 2.1 times is your general scale of carbohydrates being 4 calories, fats being 9 calories. So when you're burning a fat, you're roughly using 2.1 times the amount of calories. So down to the mitochondria, so like the energy powerhouse of the cell, 2.1 times more energy. So this is where BDNF, lower sugars, your brain is functioning at a higher capacity. That is, I could tell anybody that has actually fasted before, they're like, yeah, I experience massive cognitive changes when I'm fasting. Versus I've also done the personal research of fasting for 3 days and then breaking my fast with like 200 calories and then 400 calories and then 600 calories, then 800 calories of cake. So I promise you, don't do that. Bad. The 800 calories of cake that you break your fast with, it feels like you're walking and then running, and then you're like, I feel great. And then a semi truck just takes you out, and you're just like, you're just feeling lethargic. You're like, my brain doesn't work at all. You start to feel sick. And then you really start to be able to connect together, like your gut microbiome health with your brain health. So, like, if you've been eating pizza your whole life and you eat ice cream, you're not going to notice the difference. But if you stop eating all of those foods, you re-inoculate your gut, you start getting your brain right, and you have higher levels of neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and then you switch back over to the old diet, you're going to feel how bad you actually feel. Like, it's been years since I've ever eaten anything that was kind of considered not good for your gut microbiome health, or at least mine. But I can tell you during this process that, holy crap, like, just, I will never go back to the foods that I used to eat. Not just because it's going to lower my brain-derived neurotrophin factor most of the time. It's just because it's not good overall. And if you're watching all the videos on this page, you should be able to deduce that yourself as well if you read the books, if you read the research, if you go down the path that I'm trying to light up for you. Like, these are things that I wish I knew that I didn't know. And, well, now everything that's on this page didn't exist when I needed it. Now it exists for you. So when you start looking at like the role of BDNF and neuroplasticity, you will find conflicting information. So you can always go to a doctor and get your brain-derived neurotrophin factor tested. Most doctors will not talk about this stuff. And this would come from a book called The End to Illness by, is it Agus something? I don't remember his name. But that book talks about tests that you can go get as preventative measures so you don't develop illnesses. And then if you look at BDNF, we'll go back to this document. You can see BDNF right here, right? So this is helping your brain function better. This honestly should be common knowledge by now, but anxiety, nutrition in the brain, calming anxiety of food, stress and eating behaviors. So when you jump over into like stress and eating behaviors, this comes from the microbiome video that we were talking about that I created for you. HPA axis, your glucose metabolism, your insulin sensitivity, your appetite-related hormones. So all of this stuff is going to start to connect itself together. And what I want to show you on this paper is this right here. So this is one thing. Thus, mildly challenging stimuli limiting in duration can be good stress. So good stress. Fasting is a version of good stress, assuming that your doctor, your PCP, somebody smarter than me tells you that that is in fact true. Don't listen to me at all. I'm just a random person on the internet. I don't know anything. But may increase the motivation to achieve direct goals and the outcomes in homeostasis. So a sense of mastery, accomplishment, and the perceived as positive and exciting. This shit is positive and exciting for me. So like if this is sense of mastery and accomplishment, oh my gosh, I've spent years trying to learn this information and I figured it out enough to be able to reteach it to other people. So perceived as positive and exciting. Well, I hope this is positive and exciting. However, more prolonged and more intense stressful situations lower the sense of mastery and adaptability. So when somebody is trying to create something that they don't understand, it stresses the person out because they don't fully understand it, which would remove the sense of mastery. Like I feel no stress reteaching this information, like the stress challenging of natural homeostasis on an organism. So this is like where it's like homeostasis diet. Like these are homeostatic mechanics. That's why I'm teaching you them, so I can hope you follow them, because you really can't not follow these when it's a part of homeostasis, right? Like what? But all I want to give you if you decide to read through these types of research papers on eating behaviors are hyperpalatable foods. So high fat, high sugar foods. And what you're going to notice from a high fat, high sugar food, let me show you one. So you've heard before, hungry, eat a Snickers. This is where we're becoming low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, the inability to properly utilize ketones. So their marketing phrase actually is very scientifically accurate. That if you are hungry, you will get angry, you will experience hypoglycemia, which is known to make a person a little bit frustrated. Like hungry, eat a Snickers, like you don't seem yourself. Well, no, duh. Anybody who would be going through the process of intermetabolic switching would not seem themselves. But you can see right here, this has 15 grams of fat, 5.6 grams of saturated fat, 0.3 grams of trans fat, which like apparently that's demonetized, but you don't normally see this stuff anymore. So this should be a Snickers right here. So, you know, you've got 0.3 grams of trans fat when everyone's demonetizing that. Make your own deductions on that one. But 31 grams of sugar and 15 grams of fat. That is why these taste very good. So hyper palatable foods, when you're looking at these high fat, high sugar ones, possibly addictive qualities, they may possess addictive qualities. Think in terms of this. If you are eating high fat, high sugar foods, and you switch over to foods that don't have high fat, don't have high sugar, which is where you go from eating like bags of chips and sodas and Doritos and burritos and candy and ice cream over to like maybe vegetables or like some sort of meat that has like one ingredient in it, like salmon or something. They don't possess addictive qualities. These other foods possess addictive qualities. And you can read the book like Taste That Kills if you're trying to look at that stuff. You think his name is, it's not Eben Alexander, it's Dr. Russell Blaylock talks about that stuff a lot. But you start to realize that these foods that we eat, they cause this very short-lived gut bacteria inside of us. So we constantly feel hungry, like we can never feel satiated because we're consuming these, honestly, in my opinion, terrible ingredient foods that disrupt your gut, that make you constantly hungry. Like I can tell you right now, if we had to have a challenge of like you can't eat for a week, I'd say, okay, cool. I might experience hunger like once. So once you start to remove these bad hyperpalatable foods out of your diet, you start to recognize you feel more satiated, you feel more sane. You're not constantly feeling like your glucose levels are low and you're getting angry and frustrated and you can't think and you're having brain fog and all of this other stuff that human beings should never have. I wanted to say a swear word there, but I didn't. I'm doing better at this PR stuff. Anyways, consumption of hyperpalatable foods over time could lead to a ton of issues, promoting increasingly compulsive behavior. This stuff is real. I was probably the most compulsive person. I was like, well, increasingly compulsive behavior. So like I was doing everything wrong in my life. I couldn't even think for the life of me. So what I'd like you to do when you're looking at these papers about eating and food, learn about palatable foods. Like highly palatable foods may be addictive to the similar way of drug abuse. It's in research papers talking about foods being like some sort of neurofeedback loop of drugs. I'm not the one saying this stuff. Like, long considered critical factor develop of addictive disorders and relapse addictive behaviors. However, few studies have reviewed the links between stress and food intake, particularly hyperpalatable foods. Like, just you are a living example in some cases of these. We have few links between the connection of stress and this. Yeah, like waking up and feeling like crap is not good. Like, I have not woken up. I've not had a headache in years. I've not had a stomach ache in years. I have not woken up tired in years. And I used to wake up tired all the time. I used to get headaches all the time, and I used to get stomach aches like usually every day. Like, I thought stomach aches were normal. I thought headaches were normal. I thought being tired and lethargic was normal. Until you realize it's not. You're like, wait a minute. All the thoughts that I've been taught to think are wrong. So sorry, I moved myself back over here. So all I'd like to conclude on research papers like this is one such homeostatic has been disrupted in the feeding behavior. So like when you change the way that you feed, it's going to cause stress. Like I would salivate thinking of Cheetos for a long time. And it took me about 9 months to stop eating those. But then you start to recognize that you should have never been eating those in the first place. And the only reason you eat them is because probably you ate them, ate, present tense, past tense, ate, eating, is because you were consuming them as a child and you didn't have sufficient information to be able to compare and contrast the right words and the wrong words. So you just, these taste good. I'm going to eat them. And then when you get older, you're like, I don't feel like I should. So physiological aspects of eating behaviors have been long studied. This information is derived from animal models, okay? So this is where you go into animal models, and this becomes the chance where you choose whether or not you just want to completely write something off because it's animal models and they won't, allow people to study humans. But I've done my own self-study on a majority of these things, and you can clearly feel the difference between eating tubs of ice cream and fasting. So when you become fat adapted and intermetabolic switching goes like this in your body, I can guarantee that the majority of people that live the healthy lifestyle, that fast, that actually pay attention to what they eat when they eat, would never consume tubs of ice cream. But if you truly want to find that compare and contrast to validate whether this information is true or false for yourself, I did the eat tubs of ice cream. Wake up, eat a tub of ice cream. Not even kidding. So I'm not suggesting you do this in any way, shape, or form, but in order to better really understand that, like, okay, animal bodies, experiments inconsistent, like, and it'll even say right here, in humans, individuals' differences in food intake responses are similarly noted, roughly 40% increase and 40% decrease in caloric intake when stressed. So 20% of people did not change feeding behaviors during stressful periods. So varying related to the specific type of stressors that a person is experiencing. So there is a lot of research in this area behind the foods that you're consuming and what they're actually doing to you. So remember, when you're looking through these, look for like palatable foods. You're going to find that palatable foods is mentioned 42 times. And in a document like this, BDNF is mentioned 0. But then glucose is mentioned 7 times, talking about glucose metabolism over here. So when you start to look through these, you can see right here, like crushing syndrome. You've got literally associated with upper body obesity, atherosclerosis, glucose intolerance, hypertension, and then moving down, you have all issues with glucose metabolism. Then glucose neogenesis, just give that one a Google. So all of this information you're going to find will connect itself back to itself once you read through all of it and you can start to connect the dots in your mind. You're like, should I drink this soda that has 0 grams of fiber in it? Probably not. Why? Because back to the initial point, brain-derived neurotrophin factor and sugar. Read through this. I mean, there's even Forbes articles, which I would not trust a Forbes article because people can pay to be on here. And like, that's a really terrible photo. This article is more than 10 years old. So there's a warning that this article is more than 10 years old. And then you just look at this. Like, this is why I would never go to this website. We're not even going to waste our time on that. It's just pop-up city. So don't use that as your source. Use research papers as your source. And if you don't understand words in research papers, just Google them and then wrap your brain around them. And the more you start to learn this stuff, the more you're going to start to understand this stuff. So you can see right here, I've never been to this page, but it says a role of BDNF in depression pathogenesis and a potential target as antidepressants, modulator of stress sensitivity. So you're going to be able to see, as you read through these, BDNF will repeat itself in a majority of these. So it says, does not show response. 30% of patients with depression who are resistant to treatment. Well, if the treatment is just drugs and not a lifestyle change, of course. You can't change if you're in the same environment that created your depression in the first place. Like, if I was still, like, when at my deepest of depression, I was sleeping all weekend. My whole weekend would be me laying in bed, and the only reason I'd get out of bed is to not piss the bed. So, like, that's where I started with all of this information. And now I'm super excited to be able to share this with somebody else, being like, you depressed? Oh my God, learn about brain-derived neurotrophic factor, neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and Optimize, though, and your life will change really fast. So, I'm going to cover the books, but first I'd like to conclude with a very simple whiteboard chart. So right here would be the homeostatic line. Now, if you choose in the morning to wake up, don't eat, let your glycogen deplete, you will drop down into starting to metabolize fat. That's a process called intermetabolic switching that would be happening right here called flipping the switch, which I mentioned it in the microbiome, and we'll mention it and go in more detail into the fasting videos. But right here is, remember, the bigger the belly, the smaller the brain. So the smaller the belly, the bigger the brain is actually, if one version is true, the reverse engineer of something should be true to validate that it is actually true. So if the bigger the belly means the smaller the brain, the smaller the belly should thus mean the bigger the brain. So right here, you got your sugar in your body, S-U-G-A-R, $2 PowerPoint presentation over here, easiest way to understand. So your sugar, as your sugar is dropping, okay, this would thus create the increase in the brain-derived neurotrophin factor. So you hit the lowest point, your brain can start to grow. So this is like presence of IGF-1, which is produced through consuming some sugars. So insulin growth factor 1, body grow, brain slow. But switching from carbs to sugars is beneficial. So the ideal day that a person would be going through for brain-derived neurotrophin factor would be in the morning, right, decreasing their sugar intakes, okay, and we're going to talk about this in the weight loss video, decreasing their sugar intakes, decreasing their calorie absorption, and then you would reach the most optimal point of your brain's ability to regenerate itself. And then at lunch or at dinner, whenever after you exercise, boom, you'd be consuming your sugars right here. And we're going to talk about that in the weight loss video about like your carbs and sugars and eating and getting your cells, like opening up your cell in the morning so it can absorb its sugars, and then letting your cell open up even more through fasting throughout the day, and then you can absorb twice the amount, so you're not going to have that spillover of excess sugar floating around in your body, raising your overall sugar levels in your blood, which has been known to cause some bad things. So in the morning, you think brain-derived neurotrophin factor, you've got two scales. You can eat a bunch of sugar in the morning, and you can continue to consume sugar all day, and you never reach that threshold of achieving higher rates of neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, or brain-derived neurotrophin factor. So that's option A, consume sugars and just eat all day, which a lot of people do. Or you start to learn about the fasting. So you dip down into the levels of enhanced neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and brain-derived neurotrophin factor. But in the fasting video, you'll learn about the plaques that form in the brain, just gunking up synaptical plasticity. And honestly, you can see with dementia, sugars being the leading causes of actually generating obesities and dementias, that actually does in fact slow the brain. So now let's talk on some books. But the big takeaway from here on brain-derived neurotrophin factor is you can see it's connected to fasting and the neuroplasticity. That's a patient called HM, by the way. I was explaining that to somebody. But it is connected to sugar. And sugar is connected to anxiety. And anxiety and depression are very common things that people experience. So when you do your own research, I would like to say that we'll probably meet in a common ground where we can say, okay, too much sugar too often could promote anxiety. Too much sugar too often accompanied with other hyperpalatable foods ingredient-wise could possibly disrupt the gut microbiome. And now if you've watched the gut microbiome video and you've watched this video and you've read the books that I've suggested in the microbiome videos, and you're about to read the books that are suggested in this video, this will start to help you come to most likely the same conclusion. I mean, if you believe that everything I'm saying is wrong, then I'd love to talk to you and be like, okay, where did I go wrong? Because I've personally tried these things myself, and I can tell you, eating tubs of ice cream, you feel like garbage. Literally, just eating garbage makes you feel like garbage. So, concluding on this, the books. So the brain that changes itself. This is where you're going to learn about the patient called HM. We're going to learn about neuronal plasticity in this video, so reported incidents with this product. When you see books that have like very little writing on here, these are usually the better books because they're written by some doctor that's going to like monotone you to death. And sometimes I'd love to be monotoned to death because that's learning and earning the life that you want to live. But this is a good book that talks about neuronal plasticity. So this one was suggested to me by somebody who was in med school once. Whenever I was like trying to change my life, I was like, yeah, I'm trying to change this. And they're like, have you ever heard of this book? And I was like, nope. And they're like, you'd love it. And I loved it enough to be able to suggest it to somebody else. So this is a good book to teach you about the neuronal plasticity. Now, neurofitness, we have a module on here that's going to be talking about breathing. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there's links down below for the website where all of these are in a formed order of like preferred learning. Like you would want to learn about your gut before you learn about your brain-derived neurotrophin factor, and you'd want to learn about brain-derived neurotrophin factor before you learn about fasting. Because like fasting's cool and all, but what would really make you choose to fast? Thinking, oh, fasting, not eating, or oh, raising my brain-derived neurotrophic factor neurogenesis and neuroplasticity and cleaning my brain through using this one thing that is technically doing nothing. So trying to teach everybody in an order that, like, I wish I would have learned these things in when I learned them, because honestly, I was just wandering around. I'm like, what's this? And then I'd go in that, and I'd go down that hole, and I'd be like, well, what's this? And then I'd go over here and go that, and I'd be like, well, what is that? And I'd be like, brain-derived what? So neurofitness. This is a good book, which is going to reinforce neuronal plasticity again. And my favorite line in this book is, when I play catch with my kid, we play catch with our left hands, even though they're right-handed, because neuronal plasticity. Promise you, if majority of people that are right-handed write their name with their left hand, it's going to look like a 4-year-old tried to spell their name. At least me. If I write with my left hand, we're just going to be like, something's wrong with that guy. Yeah, I can't write with my left hand. I mean, I can, but it's terrible. I think a majority of people can connect with that. But this one, you're going to learn about breathing versus brain surgery, so anxiety. And then you start to plug the pieces together. Breathing can help with my anxiety. My gut health can help with my anxiety. Not consuming too much sugar can help with my anxiety. So when you start to look in reality, what is the root cause of anxiety? Maybe you're connecting the dots together. But I hope you do. And then this one right here is just a ChatGPT book that I was looking at, because apparently ChatGPT is some crazy thing right here. So we're just going to hit the back button on this one and go back. What book were we looking for here? What book were we going to include with this one? Let's see. We got Neurofitness. We've got this one. Oh, I was looking for a third book, so hang on one second. I would say this one's a fun one. So this is a crash course medical school neuroscience book. And whenever I came across this one, I started to learn about the limbic system. And I was like, holy crap, limbic stress. So if you literally type in limbic stress and hit enter, this brings you down another rabbit hole. Our emotional reactions to sometimes take place. So emotion parts can overpower or even paralyze thinking parts, sending our bodies into fight or flight responses. And fight or flight responses, you ain't digesting anything. An important part of the fight or flight response in our brain is the limbic system, where our emotional reactions to something take place. Now, if you look into the research and you start to recognize, like neuroprogression, the hidden mechanics of depression right here, depressive disorder is a potentially aggressive state of neuronal deterioration causing apoptosis. And then you start to copy this. You type apoptosis. Is apoptosis improved with fasting? So it says, during long fast, the body's survival of eliminating unnecessary cells via apoptosis, a programmed cell death, is happening. So it seems as though fasting and depression have some connections. BDNF neurogenesis and fasting. This reduced neurogenesis in people with depression. Decreased neuronal plasticity. Well, now you've got books about neuronal plasticity and different modules of research that you can go look at, and Googles that you can start to use to educate yourself more. And then the increased immune response. This is where we go into the Wim Hof method that I mentioned in the microbiome diet, but the microbiome video. And then down below, we're going to go into the Wim Hof method. But you start to recognize that symptoms and issues that people are experiencing when they're going through this is structural changes in the brain and issues in the limbic system itself. So, I mean, if you're looking at structures in the brain and decline of functioning in your structures and improving the structures through plasticity, the generation of new brain cells, the sprinkling of that brain-derived neurotrophic factor as well, are you experiencing any of these? Because I'm going to conclude this video with this. So with BDNF and learning about it, it should eventually help you understand loss of pleasures, dejections, not wanting to be a part of society, general disinterests, energy and fatigue issues, sleep and appetite disorders, somatic discomfort like pain in your body, and exercising vigorously is an increaser of brain-derived neurotrophin factor, which you will find in the documents that we attach. You're going to find some links to some books and some research papers as well. So if you're looking to optimize your brain-derived neurotrophin factor, if you're on the website, there should be a link to this document right here, and it's going to give you some more research papers like social bonding is a relevant factor. Like when a person's depressed, having anxiety, they isolate themselves. So remember, this entire page is being built to help you learn homeostatic mechanics so you can get back to homeostasis, so you don't have to worry about like stressing, suffering, having mental problems. And you can really truly focus on bettering the world around you for others. Because you got to make yourself a great person before you can help someone else be a great person. You know, if you can live a good life off the thoughts of others, but in order to live a great life, you must find your own. So stop living off the thoughts of others that tell you, hey, Go out and drink alcohol. Go eat some candy. Oh, you need to appreciate yourself. What, with alcohol? It's insane crazy, but like, oh, you deserve a drink. What? Let's go out for a drink and celebrate. Celebrate what? With a drink? Sounds crazy, but I used to do it. So this is going to give you some more information, and that's kind of what I want to conclude this with, is you're going to realize, so like eating issues, concentration and memory failures. So concentration and memory failures, there's going to be something on here about meditation. I never was taught to concentrate. We don't learn how to concentrate in school. Nobody says stare at, well, unless you were a bad kid like me and you had to go stand in the corner, which I did that a lot, but I didn't really understand the value of staring at the corner, and I would always like look. So concentration, didn't have that. Memory failures, guess what? Plasticity, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of it's falling in together now. Feelings of guilt and low self-esteem. Well, yeah, if you're depressed, you feel like you're a burden to the world, or at least I felt like a burden to the world. Poor vision of the future. Well, self-love affirmations, we're going to talk about those too as well. So a majority of the pillars that I'm coming from have started here, where you can see comorbidity with other diseases. Of course, you're going to have other issues if you're not healthy. If you're literally the hip to weight ratio that we talked about, all-cause mortality risk going up by the bigger the belly, the smaller the brain. The bigger the belly, the more visceral belly fat, the more problems you're going to experience in long term. So hence the frequency and possibility of not wanting to live anymore. And if we want to be completely transparent, yeah, at the lowest of my life was pointless. I had nothing. Like, I had literally nothing to lose. I was a value to no one. I was a burden to everyone, including my own self. So, yeah. Brain-derived neurotrophin factor. Learn about it. It's Miracle-Gro for your brain. So the key takeaways from this would be these same statements. Mind your gut and you keep your mind, and wake up, don't eat, let your glycogen deplete, so you can learn about intermetabolic switching. So to conclude in this video, yeah, brain-derived neurotrophin factor. Really something that nobody is taught about, and I don't know why we're not taught about this one, when it's extremely important for enhancing the function of your brain, and I think we use these things on a daily basis to make decisions. And then if you can increase your neurogenesis rates, your neuroplasticity rates, your brain-derived neurotrophic factor rates, clean your brain, and then thus increase the ability to actually perceive information, which is reading the books on a faster speed that I suggest to people on here, you're going to be able to chain together your thoughts in ways, shapes, and forms you never could before. Like, you're literally going to run out of air. Before you're done able to getting that stream of consciousness out, you would actually run out of air. And before, I would have to like struggle to think about how to form sentences. So I was just because maybe I didn't read enough books and I wasn't well read enough to be able to form the conversation in my brain, to be able to speak the conversation out loud for somebody that may have been listening. But you're going to be able to do all of this stuff too. That's why I'm giving it to you. Because if I can teach you all of this and it changes your life, you will then recommend it to somebody else because it in fact changed your life. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you're on YouTube, feel free, comment down below. Let me know what you want from me. I literally just here serve you. So, whoops, hang on one second. Got a phone call. This is every video somebody calls me. This is the second time it happened. So I apologize about that phone ringing right there. But in conclusion, learn about your brain-derived neurotrophin factors so you can accelerate the rate that you're able to absorb, learn, and form new connections in your brain. I mean, when I first heard of neurogenesis, I actually remember it. I was reading off of my iPad with my Justin Bieber haircut, being like, neurogenesis is the birth of new brain cells in the memory and learning center. And I had no idea what a hippocampus was. I was like, hip-hop? Hip-hop anonymous? You know, if you watch that movie, damn you gave him all the easy ones. Yeah, try hippocampus for change, not hip-hop anonymous or hippopotamus. No, hippocampus. Close. Now, I don't know why a hippocampus and hippopotamus sound the same, but they do. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you need anything, let me know. Make sure you take advantage of the documents, and I will see you in the next video. See you later. Bye.